Hello, welcome to the L&G Just Covered podcast, where we talk to advisors, key stakeholders and other people in the industry about their views and opinions in the intermediary space. My name's Wayne.
And I'm Hazel, and today we're joined by two new guests. We've got Rachel, who's Head of Impact and Inclusion, and we have got Amy, who is a Senior Advice Manager. So two really, really interesting guests in that we'll get a really diverse range of topics from. So welcome both.
Hi.
Welcome.
Hello. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, we're excited to hear more. And I'd love to know, describe what your roles are, how they operate. We'd love to learn more about that. I guess, Rachel, we'll start with you.
So I am Head of Impact and Inclusion. So it's a very new role. It actually only started in December. I have been at L&C for 14 years. So I'm part of the furniture, really. But within my role, I look after sustainability, diversity and inclusion, our vulnerable customers and kind of our wellbeing, charity and community. So I'm all across the whole company in the mortgage and protection space.
And then I've worked at L&C for 9 years, always in protection, but my current role, I manage 4 managers and around 40 to 50 advisors. We've just done some recruitment. So I do a lot of the training and development of the managers, of the advisors, and making sure we hit our business targets.
Excellent, excellent. I'm going to ask you a question now, because a lot of people tend to say this. Did you fall into the industry or did you plan to come into the industry?
I definitely fell into it. I was actually, I did a degree in dance, so completely not the career I was planning.
You're not on TikTok, are you?
No, not for that. But I think it's a really interesting one because even recently I was at the Women in Protection Conference and they asked that question across the whole audience. I think there was 2 people who stood up in the room to say yes. So it does make me think about, our industry and how we can get people into it a lot more. But definitely, I was a dancer. When I actually came to L&C, they thought I was going to last 2 weeks because they couldn't really understand why I wanted to go from dance into financial services. And I still remind them 14 years later that I'm still here.
What about yourself, Amy?
I definitely fell into it, if I'm being honest. I did a history degree and straight out of uni wanted to get a job, and L&C were the first ones to get back to me, but instantly fell in love with protection and couldn't imagine working in another industry.
I think a lot of us have very similar stories. And then it's great to see how your careers have then obviously progressed since that starting point. So, Amy, do you want to share a bit about obviously you've mentioned that you started in protection and built your way up. And what kind of skills have you developed over the years, or how do you think you've achieved that?
Oh, well, I think if you met me when I started at L&C as a protection case manager, I was quite timid. I was new to the working world. I was quite get my job done, but not say too much. But was really championed to progress throughout the industry. And I was like, oh, you know what? I fancy advice, and that you have to be confident to be an advisor. So that was a skill that I learned there. And then I thought, oh, actually, I would quite like to share this knowledge with a group of people. Went into team management, loved that, loved seeing people coach and develop and really achieve the goals that they want to achieve. And it was really rewarding seeing people join an industry with, just their degrees or their qualifications and see them get the deposits on their first houses, start families and progress their own careers too. And then, in the senior manager role, same sort of thing, lots of talking to people, developing them and going from there.
It's so lovely, isn't it, that you can build that confidence through doing the job, and then you think, oh, okay, how can I help others, and how can I build a sort of a network in terms of processes internally in order to do that? And we've caught up before around that, haven't we? There's a lot of things that you do to help people firstly achieve confidence, maintain it, and become better at their jobs and better people, I suppose. Something perhaps you could elaborate on at all?
Yeah. Some public speaking is something that I've been really working on personally, and I'm very open about that. What's a senior manager doing that's not confident at public speaking, but I've been mentored at L&C to do it. This year I really challenged myself to step out of my comfort zone. So I presented an award at our Blues Ball. I've spoken on panel. I've agreed to do this podcast, which is out of my comfort zone. And I think showing your vulnerability in your development areas and showing people that even when you get to certain roles, you're not the finished article and you need to keep working on yourself means that people can be open with you with what they want to achieve, and you can work with them to get to where they want to be.
Yeah, that's growth, isn't it?
And I've seen Amy completely develop and change, and confidence has been absolutely amazing to watch.
It's that growth mindset, isn't it? You've had that. Did you have to build that up from the confidence of being an advisor?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I really struggled with objection handling when I first started advising. If someone said me no, I'd be like, oh, okay. Whereas you have to be that advisor. It's like, well, you should talk to me because of X, Y, Z, and you've got so many vulnerabilities and we need to talk about them. If you don't want to take my advice after we've spoken about it, that's fine, but let me put you in an informed position and let's go from there. And if you don't have that energy, people can sense that straight away, and you won't be able to get them the protection they so desperately need.
Yeah, you're right. Energy is a massive, massive thing in this industry, isn't it? And that can
100%.
really change the direction of conversation. Rachel, what about yourself? So you've got quite a broad role then. That it seems like a really lot of plates to spin. So how have you ended up kind of within that space, and what do you enjoy about it?
Yeah, I mean, I was going through the admin roles in different areas, but what always came through for me was my care for customers and care for colleagues, making sure that, you know, everybody was given opportunities, treated, you know, fairly. And I think that came across as I grew through the company as well, about what opportunities could be open. A few years ago, I opened up a team called Customer Care, which is really supporting customers who don't necessarily want to complain, but more just have that loop of where can I show something's not perfect, or where can I get that additional help when I don't quite fit into that kind of standard process. And that really develops my understanding of vulnerable customers. I went to the UK Finance Academy and learned about vulnerable customers there, trained and graduated through them to really understand how we can make a difference with the additional support element of our business. And we are a big broker, you know, I think we have an influence, and I think we should be a voice, we should be doing the right thing for as many people as possible. And what's really key is, like, we are fee free. So actually that opens up opportunities for a lot of people with really different circumstances. And it's kind of developed from there. I've been a champion in different areas of the business. Inclusion is such a very important thing to me. People belonging, whether it's our customers or our colleagues. And I've always kind of taken that two-pronged approach with everything I do. If we're doing something for our customers, we should be doing it for our colleagues. And it's developed from there in kind of more of the strategic side of things now, to make sure we're looking at it across the business. Really happy as well. We've just got B Corp status as a business. So it's showing the evidence of the great work that we're doing, which I was already aware of, but actually to get that accreditation and recognition has been really important for us.
And that's not easy to get, so congratulations.
Really
That's a lot of
difficult,
work.
yeah. I think it was one of the hardest things actually within my career, but I think once you know you are doing that right thing, if you can evidence it. And what I love about B Corp is it brings so many different areas of the business together, and it's evidencing from every aspect. So actually it was a accreditation for everybody, which is brilliant.
Yeah, and you mentioned obviously vulnerability is a massive piece, and I think it's really obviously we all know when any advisors, provider, we all play a massive part in that vulnerability piece. But
Absolutely.
Sometimes we do risk, is that a bit of a buzzword, or do people say they've got a vulnerability process, and how robust actually is it?
Yeah.
So we did a bit of research and put together a vulnerability checklist with the Consumer Duty Alliance recently, and that's kind of a nice guide for people. But what have you said have been your key things that you've implemented or that have helped with that?
So I think for me, I try and stay away from checklists, tick boxes, kind of. I don't ever want a customer to be labelled. And we even don't use the word vulnerable. We use additional support. It's a really key focus for us. But I think for us, a key thing has been in making that inviting and disclosure environment by having opportunities where people can disclose and share and have that trusting kind of avenue. I think it opens up them to be supported in the best way they can. And I think especially in the protection space, it's really important, because if we get that trust and that vulnerability kind of upfront, have those clear disclosures and conversations, we're then hopefully not going to get misrepresentation later in the line if they need to make a claim, which has been really key. We've introduced things like digital disclosure because we found that different people actually sometimes just don't want to say it out loud. So by having the opportunity to say that early on and give that information just over the written format, we've got avenues where we ask the customer, we also ask again. So because vulnerability can be at any point during the transaction with us. And, they could be if they're doing a mortgage alongside the protection, it could be a few months that they're with us. And we see life events that happen, daily for people, which could suddenly interrupt them. And they are, considered what we say vulnerable. But also we're seeing since the COVID kind of era is the kind of multi-layered vulnerabilities. So people are seeing, you know, there is the income shocks, the mental health layered. So it's more of a layered approach. But I think having that disclosure environment where they can trust and build that trust throughout the application is really key.
And you're finding, obviously, in society now and rhetoric around being vulnerable, it's out there, isn't it, in all walks of society. So
Yeah.
you're finding, because you've got that process where you've got that culture where they can be vulnerable, obviously not labelled as that, but are they disclosing more as a result of
Yes,
that?
we are seeing, and I think we're seeing new disclosures that we've never seen before. We've seen as well things that people may not have experienced from colleagues as well. Things like domestic abuse and things which are still really high, levels across, and sometimes we wouldn't be aware it was happening. But for customers to be coming forward and really sharing that openly is a really key thing for us to make sure that we are supporting them in the right way. But it questions when you start seeing that two-pronged approach again. If you're getting that many coming in from your customers, what support do our colleagues need as well? So it's constantly thinking about our approach with that. We've also seen, financial difficulties, mental health. There's lots of things that are coming, but I think there was more of a worry about sharing those things previously. But we are starting to really build that trust to say it's so important we have these conversations, not only because we can help you now, but also we want to make sure, especially in the protection space, that we are getting that application right and we've got everything detailed and we're supporting you the best way we can.
And with people, if they can see you're doing that with the customers and you're bringing it internally as well, that positive impact on the culture must be huge, surely.
Yeah, it's been a real transformation. We were only talking about earlier, on the way here, the last few years have been a real journey for us. And I think we talk about vulnerabilities of our customers, but us being vulnerable as colleagues, sharing our stories, being really open, is creating that culture that there is this trust in our culture that you can share what you need to. You can have those open conversations. We've got the feedback loops the same for our customers as for our colleagues. And I think we're seeing a real impact.
It really helps that connection, doesn't it? We did something as a team when we did that, and encouraged to be vulnerable and stories from when you were growing up and all that type of thing. And the stuff you learn is unbelievable. And then when you know what people have gone through, how they've thought about things, or whatever it might be, challenges they've had, or whatever family members may be, that connection is just totally galvanised, isn't it? And improved.
And I think it also helps for women in our industry, because some of the stories we've been sharing are things like menopause. And what we're trying to look to do is retain some of our talent within our industry. And I know there's some great people out there doing great things within the space, working in mortgages, women in protection, lots of different groups. But actually, what example can we set? And I think, Amy's doing great things with the journey to management, which she's working on in the background, to retain the talent in-house. But also, what are we thinking about women's health? There's lots of things that we want to think about. And, families, caregivers, all these opportunities we need to think about to make sure that we're retaining that talent and they stay within financial services.
I think that's the thing that I'm taking from that. It's really important, is that colleague aspect as well, because I remember being an advisor myself, and there are times where you'll get a really emotional customer, or you'll get a claim, or you'll get maybe a really hard customer. It's just really difficult to deal with, and then you're on to kind of almost dealing with that. I need to compromise with, and then you're on to the next. I need to now re-energize myself, get myself back in a position where I've got the next customer who deserves my full attention, time and energy. There is quite an emotional roller coaster sometimes. So how has this impacted your team, Amy, and how you operate as well?
So I run an admin team as well who deal with the claims at L&C, and we talk a lot about, okay, well, this claim has come in, who's in a headspace that can deal with that's not going to bring up too many things for you. Are you confident? We're trying to get more people doing it now, so it's a lot of hand-holding for the first couple of attempts, like, look, this is what they might say, could be the reaction. When a client is claiming on a policy, you tend to find that they're just grateful for the support and to have someone do things for them, call the GP, chase documents, or just be like, look, we'll do that on our end, you focus on getting better. And just prepping people for that conversation. I think originally the team, if they had a client come through and it's like, well, actually, I was diagnosed with cancer last year, and she's like, well, you haven't claimed on your policy. The amount of people that say, oh, I don't want the premiums to go up. And you're like, no.
I think it's like home insurance.
Yeah, it's completely different. Let's look into that for you. I think advisors like having those conversations because they feel like they're supporting people and getting them to where they need to be financially.
And what about the progression planning then? Obviously, Rachel, you just touched upon that. You're doing that kind of, is it route to leadership you mentioned, or what's that about? Tell us more.
Yeah, I think that kind of came about because, as I said earlier, if you looked at me as a case manager, no one would have pinpointed me for a management role in the future. And we have a lot of people that apply for management roles that are extroverts, which is great. We need extroverts in the industry. But there's actually a lot of introverts that have a lot to add to the table as well, that don't have the belief that they could be a manager or aren't being nurtured into the roles because they're not pinpointed as a manager. So what I wanted to do was create a journey to management which is accessible for everyone. So regardless of your background, whether you're a bit quieter, we're going to train you to be at that level. It's got 13 different tasks on it. So things like leading a team meeting, reading management books, leading an interview, all of those sort of tasks that will bring the best out of people. Self-assessment, so they complete a task, they record how they feel they've done, and an observation from a leader in the business as well to offer feedback to. It's all very self-driven, so if you want to do that task, you've got to go out and do it. And then I feedback monthly on how they're going through their packs and what they could do differently in the future. We're piloting it now, and it's had some amazing feedback from the people doing it, and the confidence from that group of people, even from this year starting it, is massive, and it's been a really good project to be working on.
How do you feel about seeing them progress? It must feel amazing.
Oh, it's why I do what I do. Like, it's that light bulb moment for someone that hasn't had the confidence to do something, just suddenly be like, oh, I'll lead that team meeting. Or actually, I'd quite like to lead that interview. Can you observe me and feedback? And we're creating a good generation of leaders ready to take on those roles. And it gives people a chance to test out management before committing to it as well. How many people go into management roles without really knowing what it's like? This makes sure that it works for the business and the person too. At the same
I love
time.
the way that you've actually highlighted that potential unconscious bias in promoting people, i.e. someone's an extrovert, talks a lot, really gregarious, right, they're all right for the role, but we don't know whether they're going to be any good at the role. We don't know what other skills they've got, conscientious they are. You all, from an advice perspective, obviously they would have had to do suitability letters, all that type of stuff. But to acknowledge that and then put it into a process and then put them through it, something that they own as well, and then you help them along, I think that is, well, certainly something we've not heard on this podcast before. Firstly, that's fantastic. And within the wider industry, I think that's something certainly to be lauded.
It's been a real fun project to be working on. And the way that it's designed is you complete the tasks in the order that you like. So if you're a hiring manager, you can say, okay, so you've done all of the presentation tasks, but you've done less of the reading a management book or vice versa. Do you think that would be something I need to support you with day one in role if you're successful? And it just gives you the tool as a senior manager to know, okay, that person could be a really great leader, but from day one, they're going to need a little bit more help with their team meetings or public speaking. And it just means everyone's aligned from the start.
I think something that's been really powerful with it as well is that Amy is on our DE&I group, which is called We Belong. And we always encourage inclusive design. So if we're creating something, we want to get it first time. And by being on the group, what you've done is you've brought the pack to the group early before we were ready to even launch it, to find different lived experiences and really understand if this was going to work for everybody. And it was looking at different ways we could make it accessible for different users. But we also had it referred to our neurodiversity working group, who went through it and there was just little things that they picked out, which there might be a point of, give a couple of examples. And someone's pointed out, well, how many is a couple? For me, if they said with my neurodiversity brain, I would overthink that, and it wouldn't be two. It could be that I've spent a lot of time just doing that one area, or spend around approximately 30 minutes. They said, you need to tell me it's got to be done in 40 minutes or 30 minutes. Give me a time. And it was really interesting feedback that actually just really shaped to make it as inclusive for everybody from the start.
That's so interesting, because we've got neurodiversity teams and behavioural science teams and things as well. If we're recruiting, we use that. And you're totally right. The tone of one bit of language or one word can really change the impact of
language is so important.
Perceived.
And I think then it invites them to feel very comfortable approaching it. So we are getting different voices, really diverse people coming forward for it. So I'm really excited. And it is going to be expanded now, isn't it? So
Yeah,
it's
we're
really
gonna
exciting.
roll it out to some other areas in the business, but I'm very conscious not to take full credit. I pieced it all together, but I reached out to different leaders in the business which specialised in different areas and asked for their input. So it's not just my thoughts on what makes a good leader or what makes a good manager. It's collective work that we've done together.
And that's what I'm hearing a lot about. It's all about collaborating and getting the right people and accepting that everyone's got a different specialism, bring it all together and they thrive. You mentioned, Amy, a little bit about the impact on colleague and business. So I'd love to know if anyone's listening to this and they're thinking, oh, this sounds amazing, but what's the in business impact? How have you seen the kind of business impact going through and coming through this as well from the work that you're
From
doing?
the journey to management?
Well, any of the kind of inclusivity.
I think we've
and
become
journey to
more,
management?
the innovation has been massive growth for us from it. I think people have seen that their voice is listened to, and that culture of being able to give feedback. Because originally, I think a lot of our feedback, we did have a loop where there was a route to do anonymous. And when we introduced it, there was a lot of people going, well, if I go that route, then, I don't have to put my name to it. There's no... But I think the accountability and people are excited to share their thoughts now, aren't they, into the feedback loops, and they kind of really share their ideas. And I think every idea is listened to. We've got something called no idea is a bad idea. And the CEO will look at each of those and kind of find ways of what can we do? How can we make this better? And, that wouldn't have happened a few years ago. And that is such a difference, because there's that trust, there's that, it all comes back to trust. I think if people feel comfortable, then they're sharing ideas, our innovation, we're all growing, and everyone's just bringing exciting different ways to the table, which is brilliant.
Yes, you're living and breathing what you're asking your advisors in the front line to do. Because we spoke a lot in the previous episode we filmed this morning about it being all about trust. Like when you're doing any sort of protection sale, any advice giving, that person is putting their full trust in you, aren't they, if they're going to go ahead. So I think it's so nice that naturally you're living and breathing that within your business. I guess it just naturally, Amy, when you're looking at your kind of advice teams, I take it, does that just naturally flow through, or how has that impacted them?
Yeah, I expect my advisors to take on feedback for coaching and development to give good customer outcomes, but equally I welcome feedback all the time. It's not personal. If that's going to work for you, then let's adapt what I'm doing to get the right outcome for everyone, whether that's my delivery in a team meeting or how I'm offering feedback in a coaching one-to-one. I think if you can show people that your vulnerabilities, like, look, this is what I'm working on, but this is what I want you to work on, you work together more. No one's... Yeah,
you're showing that vulnerability side in terms of you've got development areas anyway. Just because you're a manager doesn't mean you don't have that. And you're working on that. Like you say, you're living and breathing what you want them to do. So they're more likely to do that. I presume that's helped with, obviously we talked about culture, but in terms of staff turnover, if you like, people staying with the organisation, feeling like they're all on the same journey.
And we've also had people come back.
Right.
Which is interesting.
Which is a real pat on the back.
It's really powerful, because actually they were like, what? Hang on, I feel like there's a bit of that fear of missing out. It was like, what is going on at L&C? I want to get back. So that's been really exciting for us. And they've, some people have come back, haven't they, and jumped straight into like managers' roles and things. There's all really exciting things going on in that space. And I think we've got a value of one L&C, and I think that brings together that whole collaboration piece. And I think as well, you talked about kind of everyone's bringing different skills in. I think what's really important in our industry is that we multi-skill people as well. So there's been a real focus on that as well. So we can easily shift between departments, support each other really well. But also you're growing that person. So that's been a really key thing for us.
I love that. I didn't think L&C FOMO was a thing. It is.
I think if you understand what someone wants to do with their career and you help them work towards it, regardless on whether it's protection or mortgage or something else in the industry, whether it's outside of L&C, okay, well, that's what you want to achieve. If you work hard for me whilst you're working with me, let's work towards that long term. And people want to work for you. People want to stay within the business. People want to come back, as Rachel said. It does really breed a really good environment to work in.
And I think we're seeing as well that we talk about collaboration, but we do say like collaboration over competition. We're not afraid to also share. So we've been doing some stuff within the industry. We're having like industry roundtables and things, because we've all got great things to share. And I think sometimes we forget that we're all going off and doing our own separate things in our areas, but we've been coming together to, make a better opportunity and better outcomes across the industry by all sharing, our best practice, how we can support each other. I know vulnerability space has been a big area for that. Working with our lenders and providers to make sure that we're all kind of on the same page, and also that we want to know that our customer we're putting with you is going to go on and have that same amazing journey. They're going to be supported, throughout that. Because we're recommending them, we're recommending them to that particular person. We want to make sure that lender or provider has that same impact all the way through.
Absolutely, because you don't want it to be a disjointed feeling at all, do you? And for that trust that you've built with them to then be changed. I think that is definitely so important. And even from what you've discussed so far, I mean, I'm sat here from I'm in a leadership role and a provider point of view, but I'm learning. So I'm already thinking about things that I can take and think, I'd love to do that with my team, actually. How can I learn from this? So you're
it's
right.
It's a learning process for us on these podcasts.
Yeah,
so we learn so much.
You don't stop. Yeah.
What I particularly love is the fact you're talking about sharing and going to these industry bodies or all external stuff you're doing, because quite a lot in our industry, people default, I'm not going to share that. I'm not going to share that because I know it probably comes from that legacy thinking of competitors and stuff. But the fact that you're doing that, it has that halo effect, doesn't it? That feel-good factor, the sort of industry culture piece, the perception of the industry, all that type of thing. It all adds up, doesn't it?
I mean, even a few years ago when we were starting our D&I journey, we have been on a massive journey the last few years. We reached out with L&G and we had some really good conversations because you guys were kind of leading the way. You were doing some really great stuff. And actually, we were like, one of my first questions is, what's working for you? What's not working? What's gone wrong for you? If how have you approached different things? And that was a real starting block for us. And the best piece of advice, because I had this massive list of all these ideas, they were like, start small, Rach, just take a step back and actually just think about a couple of things that you can really make those impact, make the action, and then you build that trust. So we've gone back to that trust again. But if we'd have just launched in with this massive, diversity and inclusion program, I think it would have scared a lot of people. So it was getting those steps bit by bit to introduce it. And we just continue to do that, don't we? So it's an evolving journey for us. We aren't stopping there. We just keep building it into our day by day. And we're trying to just make it business as usual, and that's our real focus.
Well, as the feedback comes in, it will constantly evolve, won't it, based on what your colleagues and customers are saying. And as the industry changes, I mean, people are getting older, people are buying properties later in life. There's probably that sandwich generation. There's a lot of more vulnerabilities that could potentially come up nowadays. And COVID, you've already mentioned, that was a huge pivotal moment, wasn't it, for a lot of people. I'm curious, Rachel, what you mentioned there were like two small things that you wanted to start on, or maybe not small. I bet the impact was massive, but two simpler things to work on. What were they? Where did you start?
So we started with bringing kind of a sense of belonging. So that was bringing together. We also reached out and we started with a very small group, didn't we, of champions. Amy was on there as well, who I'd approached first of all. So that was the voices I thought would be our starting point. And I think once we started to, as we developed sharing stories, so we'd learned that from L&G, sharing stories were so positive that we could start building on our champion group. And we've stayed together. So a lot of companies are, quite large, and they're able to branch out a lot of their kind of ERG kind of groups and stuff. But we've kind of kept ours under the We Belong umbrella, but with working groups within that. And that seems to work really well because we all come back together and have those voices. And then what we started to see was, there was people either inviting other people to join, or there was people asking. So we just started to create that culture within the belonging group, which could develop. We also did start with focusing on awareness days. And I think if anyone's starting out on the journey, I think it is a really good way to shape your starting point. But I wouldn't say now we would do that, because interestingly, I felt that we then became a little bit like a tick box, didn't we, Amy? And we were thinking, okay, it's Pride Month this month. We need to do this. We need to change our logos. We need to do all these little things. And then I was like, but why do we? So our strategy this year has actually really changed. And it was a great starting block. But actually now we know we can talk about Pride all year long.
Well, I guess it doesn't go with, does it?
It doesn't just fit with 1 month. And actually that's been a really huge kind of change for us. We also looked at some really basic steps of going back to our recruitment and our onboarding. Because for me, I was like, we need to start at the beginning. If we get it right from that very moment they join, And it was simple things like how we were recruiting our inclusive recruitment processes, using diverse different voices in our interviews. We changed some of our wording. And we also, a really powerful one was changing our job profiles. Our HR spent a lot of work on this because there's that stat, I don't know the exact wording, but it's, males will kind of look at it and go, yeah, I can go for that. Whereas I think it's like females will go, oh, if I can't get 90% of it, then I'm not going for that job because I don't think I can do it. So we actually started saying to people, even if you don't think there's everything on there, then don't worry, still apply. We want to hear from you. But another thing that we really adapted was, and I'd put in a particular job profile for a job, and they said to me, Rachel, why do they need to be excellent? And it was just the language that we're using is really key within that. And I said, well, that's what I'm expecting. I want somebody who's excellent. And they were like, but do they need to be excellent? Because I'm probably excellent at my job, but doesn't mean I think that I'm excellent all the time. And so they said, so if it said good, I'd probably go for it. And I was like, that's really interesting. That language can have such an impact on the people that are applying for a role. So starting right at the beginning has then developed our whole journey. So it's been a really strong, powerful part for us.
It really is belonging, isn't it?
It is, and you're right. It's just start at that front end, doesn't it? Getting the right people in, attracting the right people to the business. Have you noticed a different dynamic in your team, Amy, since this has all started?
Yeah, definitely. And one of the things that we're trying to do in protection as well is in the past year we've started recruiting inexperienced remote protection advisors, and we're training them all remotely because at the moment, obviously, if we do the hybrid model, it's Bath or Newcastle, or actually this way we can get talent in from all over the UK. We can be more diverse. We can get more people in. And we're seeing hundreds of applicants for those roles now, which is good, keeps me very busy. And our HR department busy, and all of our team getting and recruiting people into the industry that perhaps wouldn't have the opportunity.
So no experience of financial services?
Nope.
Okay.
We do.
What do you look for then?
So we do. We've just changed our recruitment process. So we do a role play initially. It's not protection because if you don't know protection, it can be quite hard to do that. But it's like sell a holiday, sell a car. You get a choice of 5 role plays, and then we send an IT test. And then if you pass that, we'll then do a second stage interview. Because looking at my department, some of the absolutely superstar people that we have never sold protection before. And it's like, well, how can we get that everywhere? Where can we bring that in? And we've seen some really good candidates come forward that I'm really excited about.
That is really, really great, isn't it? And as we said at the very, very start of this conversation, we all fell into financial services. So there's been a time where someone's taken a punt of all of us as well,
exactly.
based on our experience. I guess the other benefit, I'm just thinking out loud here, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is if you've got advisors placed all over the country, you've then got a halo effect for business, don't you? Because you've then got their friends, their family now aware of this. L&C are then able to move kind of further into other areas. Because let's be honest, if you're a mortgage or protection advisor, your friends are going to come to you and speak to you, aren't they? So you're growing that business as well as a result of all the great work you're doing internally on that inclusion and diversity piece.
And we do 2 events every year where the remote people, we pay for the hotel, travel down so that they can get that in-person interaction with people. Every now and then, if people are up for it, we'll pay to come in the office for a training day. So people are engaged to do that. And I think that comes from a good environment.
Still keeping that connection.
Yeah, it's so important, isn't it? Because, just obviously we had catch-up calls before, but meeting in 3D is so much better, so much more powerful, isn't it?
Definitely.
It's just great. And also just that bit where you're shouting about what you're doing, that because we were talking about the previous recording on the podcast, getting new people into the industry, that is a conundrum that we're all grappling with, isn't it? So the fact that you're doing that and you're promoting that is fantastic.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing some improvements in protection, but there's still a long way to go.
Oh, yeah.
And I think what I would love to see is, I think a lot of people talk about education in schools and think, when I was in school, you had that computer program which told you what you were going to be, and there was, if you said, oh, I like working outside, okay, you're going to be a gardener, it just put you into kind of a bracket. But I don't remember anyone ever coming in and going, come into financial services, come and I wouldn't have even known it was a career, back in that stages, or an option, or that I could even achieve it. I think there was a real, I think there's still a kind of stigma around you need to have degrees, you need to have all these qualifications, but actually sometimes the best people have just got life experience. and just a bit of common sense. And they sometimes end up being the best people, that we have. So I think it's changing, but we still have got a long way to go.
That caring piece, isn't it, as well?
It is. I know my most hated subject at school was maths, so I find it very funny when I speak to people and say I'm now in financial services, because they assume that's what it must be doing all day is maths, and I'm like, no, it isn't. That's all. It's a people business. That's been so interesting. In terms of the kind of moving forward, then, what's on your mind for what's next? Where are you wanting to take this if you were to think into the future, either one of you?
That is a question. I think for us, it is, so we've just got obviously our B Corp. We want to kind of make sure that we're making a sustainable growth for our future of our business. I think we've got a real opportunity to kind of support a lot more people for the future. We are a growing business, so I think that'll be really exciting. I think in the kind of diversity and inclusion space, we're going to do a lot more sharing. We want to share our journey, but continue on that path with everybody else. And I think it's just continuing that two-pronged approach. I know I talk about that, but it is so strong. And it's almost as well now become a three-pronged approach, because we've got community involved in it as well. We're starting to think about, where, especially the office locations that we've been. For example, in Bath, we've been there for, many, many years. And the impact, we are a big employer within that community. What can we do to support our community? Something we've just set up, which is, we're really proud of, is that we've got a community fund that we now every month can support a local community initiative or charity. And it's opening up some really kind of grassroots charities who that little bit of money injection can just really, really support them. And some of the suggestions all come from colleagues. And you get a really kind of wide variety. We've had, some LGBTQ kind of small grassroots charities that really could do with support. But we've also had really different things. There was a community initiative about supporting people with uniforms to get into the workplace. So if they were at a stage where they were wanting to return back to work but couldn't afford uniforms and stuff, they could support with that. And then just a small injection of a donation can really make that powerful for them to make that happen. And it could be that they're coming for that interview at L&C. So, that's really exciting to see.
What about yourself, Amy? How do you view it going forward?
Well, I'm about to take a 4-month sabbatical.
Okay.
But what I'd like to see in the business in protection would be for the next year to see some people complete the Journey to Management course, have some different faces in the management teams, and have the confidence to be putting themselves forward for interviews. I'd love to see the protection department grow further and have some more different people in the industry really doing well, showing the results and finding a love for protection. We all fall into it, but we're all still here because we care about it. And I want to see new people have that experience.
I guess we're all still here because we've had someone, as I said, at the start, has taken a chance on us, but then also nurtured that and given us the space to grow and learn, isn't it? So we have to ask, what are you doing for your sabbatical?
I'm getting married.
Oh, congratulations.
So I'm
Congratulations.
eloping in New York, and then I'm doing a travel around the world. Been saving for it for about 8 years, so
Fantastic.
very grateful that L&C are letting me take the time and let me come back in my role.
Oh, well, we maybe need to get you back in after that. Talk about what that's been like.
I think another thing I would add to that as well is that about what you mentioned about the growth of protection, but it's also seeing more customers protected. I think that's a real target for us. We spend a lot of time making sure that they're getting the correct advice, really informed decisions. But we also see the sad side of things when we've got claims where they haven't had protection, and that side of things. But, we try and make sure that we're helping everyone, whether it's, really reviewing the value of what they need kind of thing, really informed decisions. And I think that's really key because we have every conversation with every customer, don't we? We try and really focus on that, but we also revisit. And I think that's really important, to revisit their protection needs, because we're all talking about growth, our things are changing in our lives, life events, and making sure that they are fully protected, they have got the right protection for their needs, and that we are constantly talking to them. Because like you mentioned, we have so many people come to us who end up making a claim because we do a review and they said, oh, well, I did have cancer last year, and you're like, what? Hang on a minute, let's stop. And they've been some amazing stories that we've been able to share, haven't they? So
yeah. I had the same. I had a customer once who came in for a remortgage, and yeah, it turns out she'd been off work for a little while, and I was like, oh, how come? She, oh, I had cancer in my hip last year, and she was a nurse, so couldn't do nursing, obviously, because the pain in it. We got our mortgage paid off in that point. You know,
Just amazing.
It was actually an L&G policy, I will say. So I at the time didn't work for L&G, but I brought that up when I interviewed at L&G that I had a very positive claim experience for that customer because, it was I think they even paid back some of the premiums they paid back the premiums that she'd paid in that time as well, just to because they were like, well, actually, you should have claimed 8 months ago.
That's just amazing
on this. So it was really positive.
It's just a tribute. We hear these stories, tribute to advisors in our industry and people in our industry that just care. They're treating, someone in the previous podcast said, treating customers like their family, how you want to be treated, seeing it through their eyes. In doing that, we're just, like Hazel said earlier on, living and breathing what you're preaching. Yeah. It's just so important, isn't it? And once you've had that scenario, the sort of protection usually gets you like a bug, doesn't it? And then you're in it with everyone because there's such lovely people in the industry as well.
We've got a lady in our claims department who once a month shares a claim story, and rather than just this person got a £200 payout, she'll paint the picture. So she'll say, look, this was a 35-year-old woman, this was her job, how long it took the claim to pay out, the conversation you had with the client about what she's going to use the claim for. So again, to help our advisors be like, well, look, here's an example for you, here's a real life story that we've seen at L&C. Let's talk about your protection needs. What would you want to happen if that was
is amazing.
You?
I love that because I remember coming into the industry, particularly when I was doing a training role, and I'd been advised and all that type of thing, but I've been an advisor and stuff. But I remember when I first started as an advisor, talking to clients and stuff like that, I didn't have my own stories. So you can think of celebrities. Obviously, there's celebrities out there that have had critical illnesses, been off work, that type of thing, died. But having those stories from internally as part of the culture that you've got, that caring culture, that sort of belonging culture, must be huge because a lot of them are quite young coming into the industry. They're not going to have those stories, are they? So you use those first until you get your own, do you?
Yeah, I think it's taken over stats. Wouldn't you agree? I think stories sell more than stats.
Oh yeah, well, it's not a number anymore, is it? That is an actual human. It could be friend, family member. It's somebody's friend's family member.
And we've even had colleagues share their stories, haven't they, as well, which is, I think, of their own personal claims. And that's it's again, another one that they can relate to. You can literally say, I've heard a conversation in the office before where someone said, oh yeah, my colleague who's actually sat next to me made a claim. And you're just like, this just really brings it to life, that the impact of what that payment did, and it meant they're now back at work and they're being able to kind of live their life. And to really share those stories, it really makes
it's massive because the detail around it, isn't it? Like the expenses and all that type of thing, things that you don't think about. We were talking about it earlier, wasn't it? In that you can't comprehend the impact of it until you go through it. So the sharing of that detail there is just massive, isn't it?
I'm not surprised it gives you that. You mentioned, Damien, at the start, it's building that confidence. I can imagine that really helps your team have the confidence that if they do have a customer turn around saying, no, I'm not interested, it's like, well, actually, I've got a story I'm going to tell you now, and just sense check that you still feel that way.
I also think it helps the young advisors. We talk about this a lot, about lived experience, because we quite often have some people, like especially in the vulnerability space as well, when they say, oh my God, my customers, their parents just died. And they're like, I don't know anyone who's ever died. And you're just like, okay, wow, this is big. And it's having that really good conversations, knowing that they are going to be supported and how we can support them, and sharing those stories so they understand what to do next. And I think that's really, because when you're a sales role, it is very, you're concentrating on what you're doing, and suddenly you do get that claim. It does, throw you off, for example. And but lived experience has been a really good thing by sharing that. People that aren't experiencing these life events like bereavements and things on a daily basis, or within their life, it's given them an opportunity to know what to do next.
So we've got Nicola in our department. You probably know Nicola Kingsley-Rose. She does a lot of work on what we call hearts and minds. So she'll go out and look at claim stories outside of L&C as well, and will send us the information to roll out in team meetings. So we're constantly talking about claim experiences, the difference protection has made, along with that monthly written piece of here's a claim story for you, goes hand in hand to help with the conversation.
It needs that consistent feed of info as well, doesn't it? And so I like the way she's going externally as well, because you have to keep on it with it, don't you, to make sure people are aware it's top of their minds, that they're appreciating it. I'm not saying they don't, but you do in the protection space, don't you? Yeah.
There's just huge amounts of value that you're both adding to not only L&C but the industry. You can definitely hear that and see that through the work that you're doing. If you were to pick, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, each of you, one thing that you would say any listeners that listening to this could take away, or one key bit of advice, what would it be? I'll come to you first, Amy.
Good question. I'd probably say if you're new to the industry, don't be afraid to reach out, especially now with a lot more people working remotely. If you're newer to the industry or you've been away from it for a while, there's always an expert that can talk you through advice. You always own your own advice. That's always on you. But there's always nuances. There's always new things that come out. Just talk it through with someone. The amount of times I've spoken to an advisor and they're like, oh, I'm stuck on the case. I'm like, this advisor is really knowledgeable in that area. Just pick up the phone and have a conversation and talk it through and get the right outcome for your customer.
It's that community piece, isn't it? Absolutely. What about yourself, Rachel?
I'd probably say people over policy. So think about the person. You want to really get to know them. You want to really understand. You know, from an advice point of view, you want to make sure you know your customer, to make sure like inside and out, so you know what it looks like now for them, what the future looks like. But also, again, going back to that vulnerability and trust, to make sure that they've shared everything with you to avoid that misrep. You know, we never want those stories where somebody's paid for years and years and years. You know, they receive a diagnosis and then they can't pay out. It's just the worst thing for any advisor. So really get to know your people, and then the policy comes second.
Thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so
much. Blown away with the
learned
stuff
so
you
much.
do.